Linda emptied the joint account, took Gabriel's SUV, left their son's birthday gift stacked by the door like trash, and moved back in with her ex without even having the nerve to tell him face to face. She sent one text while he was standing in line at a pharmacy in Baton Rouge, holding blood pressure medicine for her mother and cough syrup for their boy. "I'm done pretending. Maybe now you'll know how pain feels." That was the cruel part. Not just that she left, but that she wanted him broken when she did it. Here's how it happened, and why the silence that followed hit harder than any scream ever could. Gabriel was not a spotless man, and anybody telling this story honestly had to begin there. Years earlier, when they were still living on the west side of Houston, he had cheated during a rough season in their marriage and lied about it with the kind of cowardice that makes the truth uglier than the act itself. Linda found out, and the damage was real. He did not dodge it. He slept on couches, went to counseling, stopped drinking, took extra shifts, and did the slow, humiliating work of becoming dependable again. He could not erase what he did, but for years afterward, he was the one in that house most committed to repair. By the time they moved to Baton Rouge for Linda's hospital job, Gabriel had become the kind of man people trusted with keys, rides, and emergencies. He worked logistics for a regional distribution company near the river, paid bills on time, and kept a little notebook full of dates, school events, medication refills, utility due days, and the exact kind of strawberries Linda liked from the grocery store because she swore the wrong ones tasted like wet paper towels. He still carried shame in quiet places, but he wore it like a tool instead of a costume. He didn't call himself changed. He simply kept showing up and let the years argue for him. Linda, on the other hand, never really forgave him. She stayed. Yes, but her staying came with a blade hidden in it. She accepted apologies she did not believe, slept in his bed while speaking to him like a bill collector, and brought up his worst mistake whenever she wanted to win an argument. Gabriel took that, maybe because he felt he deserved it, maybe because he thought endurance was the same as healing. Sometimes she would smile in public, hold his arm at church in New Orleans when they visited family, then freeze him out all the way home. He mistook routine for recovery, and that mistake cost him years. Still, there were good moments, enough to keep a hopeful fool hanging on. Once, on an anniversary weekend in Biloxi, Linda laughed so hard at Gabriel trying to act young on roller skates that she nearly fell into a popcorn machine. He had rented the skates because he remembered her saying she used to love rink nights as a teenager. He lasted exactly 11 seconds before windmilling into a cardboard display for sour candy. Linda laughed until tears ran down her face, and even Gabriel, flat on his back with bruised dignity, started laughing too. Later that night, they ate shrimp by the water, and she rested her head on his shoulder like the old hurt had finally loosened. Those moments gave Gabriel hope, and hope can make a man blind in ways pride never could. He noticed Linda guarding her phone more closely, stepping outside for calls, suddenly caring how she looked on random Tuesday evenings when she claimed she was just running to Target. He saw it all and still chose patience over accusation. Part of that was growth. Part of it was fear. He knew what suspicion felt like from the guilty side, and he did not want to become some trembling hypocrite policing a woman he had once betrayed. So he kept quiet, telling himself trust meant risk. Linda interpreted that quiet as weakness. The first real warning came from their son, Isaiah, who was 9 and observant in the unsettling way children can be. One Saturday morning in their kitchen, while Gabriel burned the first batch of pancakes and blamed the stove like it had insulted his mother, Isaiah asked, "Why does Mama smile at her phone but not at us?" Gabriel nearly dropped the spatula. Then the boy added, with deadly seriousness, "And if these pancakes are supposed to be circles, why they look like the state of Florida?" Gabriel laughed so hard he had to lean on the counter. But later, after breakfast, the child question stayed in his chest like a stone. Linda's ex was a man named Terrence from her college years in Atlanta, all polished phrases and old memories. Gabriel learned that much accidentally when he saw a rideshare receipt emailed to their shared account from a restaurant near downtown Baton Rouge, a place he had never taken her because it was too expensive for what he called tiny portions and decorative hunger. He asked about it gently that night. Linda did not deny anything. She just stared at him over the rim of a wine glass and said, Maybe some wounds don't close because they were never meant to. It sounded deep, but it was cruelty dressed in poetry, and Gabriel knew the difference. He tried anyway. That was his flaw and his strength both. Gabriel booked counseling again, offered a separation with ground rules, asked whether she wanted space or honesty or simply an end. He was ready, finally, for a hard truth. Linda wasn't interested in hard truth. She preferred punishment. She wanted him confused, reaching, ashamed. 4 weeks she moved through their house like a tenant with attitude, letting him cook for the family, braid Isaiah's homework schedule together with soccer practice, and drive her mother to appointments, all while she slipped pieces of herself elsewhere. Every kindness he offered became another surface she could use to sharpen resentment. The day she left started ordinary enough to be insulting. Gabriel woke before sunrise, kissed Isaiah's forehead, packed lunches, and texted Linda a reminder that her mother's prescription would be ready afternoon. At work, he unloaded a delayed shipment, joked with his crew, and took a call from Isaiah's school about a field trip form he had forgotten to sign. Life was messy but manageable. Then came Linda's text at 4:17 p.m. No warning, no discussion, no dignity. By the time Gabriel reached home, half her clothes were gone, the SUV was missing, the account was nearly drained, and their wedding picture lay face down on the floor like somebody had stepped over it. Isaiah was at Linda's mother's apartment in Decatur, Georgia. Gabriel soon learned, because Linda had driven through the night after pulling cash and filling the tank with his company fuel card. Her mother, Miss Claudette, answered Gabriel's call with the kind of tired silence that tells you she knows wrong has been done but lacks the character to confront it. They just need time, she said. Gabriel stood in the dark kitchen gripping the counter until his knuckles hurt. Time? Linda had taken his child across state lines, taken money, taken transportation, and left him in a house full of echoes. Yet somehow he was expected to behave like the inconvenience belonged to him. The next weeks were ugly. Gabriel slept little, worked more, and cried only in places that could not repeat it. The shower, his parked truck, the supply closet at work. He sent money for Isaiah anyway. He called every night. Sometimes Linda let the boy answer. Sometimes she said he was asleep when Gabriel could hear cartoons in the background. The loneliness made him raw. He walked into rooms and forgot why. He stood in grocery aisles staring at items Linda used to like, then remembered she had made a ceremony out of humiliating him. Pain is strange that way. It does not cancel love on command, even when love has plainly packed up and left. Some people around him made it worse. A cousin in Lafayette told him this was just payback with interest, like Betrayal had an amortization schedule. A co-worker suggested finding a side woman and evening the scales, advice so stupid Gabriel laughed despite himself. Even his pastor, meaning well, spoke in broad, soft phrases about storms and seasons that made Gabriel want to throw a hymnal through stained glass. Only his older sister Renee in Dallas said the thing that cut clean. You did wrong before, she told him, but that doesn't mean you owe anybody your destruction forever. Repentance is not a life sentence. He wrote that sentence down and carried it in his wallet. Linda showed no remorse because remorse would have required seeing Gabriel as human. In Atlanta, she played house with Terrence, posted careful pictures that never showed his whole face, and let rumors float back through mutual friends like poison smoke. The word was that Gabriel had been controlling, unstable, impossible to forgive. He heard all of it and answered none of it. What would he say? That he had changed but not enough for mercy. That private growth rarely survives public gossip. Meanwhile, Terrence enjoyed the performance, sending slick messages through side channels about how some women return to where they are understood. Gabriel deleted those messages without reply and got quieter. Quiet did not mean passive. Somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, Gabriel realized that chasing Linda would keep him trapped in the role she had assigned him. Guilty man, desperate man, useful man. So he stopped making speeches. He kept calling Isaiah, kept documenting every expense, every text, every date, every transfer, every denied visit. He opened a new bank account in his name only. He met with a lawyer in Baton Rouge who wore sensible shoes and spoke with devastating calm. He learned what obligations were joint, what could be untangled, and how to protect his paycheck. It was not dramatic work. It was paperwork, discipline, and the slow recovery of self-respect. He also did something Linda never expected. He got honest about his own life beyond her. Gabriel admitted that much of his identity had been built around repairing what he broke, and in the process he had let himself become a permanent apology wearing a wedding band. He had no hobbies left unless overtime counted. No close friendships. No joy that wasn't dependent on whether Linda happened to smile that day. That realization embarrassed him more than being left. So he started small. He joined a Saturday morning basketball run at a park in Baton Rouge, where men in their 30s and 40s talk trash with theological commitment and knees that sounded like bubble wrap. The basketball run saved him in ridiculous ways. One man showed up every week in expensive sneakers and shot like he was throwing bricks at a condemned building. Another called every foul like he was in a playoff game broadcast nationally to 3 billion people. Gabriel found himself laughing from the gut again, surprising himself with the sound. After games, they'd sit under a pavilion drinking cheap sports drinks and discussing kids, blood pressure, and whether anybody over 35 should be trying crossovers without signed legal waivers. It was ordinary male friendship, the kind that doesn't ask for a speech. Nobody treated him like a symbol. They just passed him the ball. Romance, strangely, returned first through memory instead of a new person. One evening after work, Gabriel cooked red beans and rice from his grandmother's recipe and accidentally made enough for a family reunion and a small militia. He invited his sister Renee down for the weekend, and she sat at his kitchen table tasting the food with suspicious reverence. "You finally learned seasoning isn't a personal attack," she said. They laughed. Later, after Isaiah called to say goodnight, Gabriel danced alone for a second while washing dishes because an old Maze song came on. It hit him that tenderness did not belong solely to marriage. A person could still carry romance inside, even alone. Linda kept expecting the old Gabriel to return. When she needed school records signed, she called like an irritated supervisor. When Terrence's car broke down and she wanted help getting Isaiah to a birthday party, she texted Gabriel as if his time were a natural resource she owned. At first, he said yes too often. Then his lawyer reviewed the pattern and raised one eyebrow so sharply it felt like legal judgment from heaven. After that, Gabriel responded only in writing, only about Isaiah, only with clear boundaries. Linda hated boundaries because they interrupted her preferred economy, where Gabriel supplied labor, guilt, and emergency rescue while asking for nothing but scraps. Around month 4, Gabriel made the decision that changed everything. His company offered an internal transfer to Charlotte, North Carolina, with better pay, steadier hours, and housing assistance if he accepted quickly. The old Gabriel would have declined, afraid a move might look harsh or complicate reconciliation theater. The new Gabriel read the offer twice, spoke with his lawyer, reviewed school and custody options, and said yes. He did not announce it to Linda as a threat or test. He simply began planning. He paid off old collection debt, sold what he did not need, boxed up the house in stages, and chose peace over performative suffering. There was humor even in the leaving. Gabriel held a yard sale one humid Saturday, and half Baton Rouge appeared to negotiate like he was auctioning gold bricks instead of a used air fryer and a lopsided bookshelf. An older man haggled for 20 straight minutes over a lamp with no shade, then proudly walked away after saving $3 like he had defeated Wall Street. A little girl bought Isaiah's forgotten toy keyboard and immediately played one wrong note over and over while her exhausted mother apologized to the entire neighborhood. Gabriel laughed more that day than he had in months. Even grief, apparently, could be interrupted by nonsense and folding chairs. He found a modest townhouse in Charlotte with a tiny patio and enough sunlight in the kitchen to make morning feel intentional. He liked that nobody then knew his history. To his new neighbors, he was just Gabriel, a black man with careful eyes, good manners, and strong opinions about trash pickup schedules. He decorated simply, framed photos of Isaiah, a worn leather chair, clean sheets, a sturdy table. No shrine to suffering. No bachelor chaos. On the first night, he sat on the floor eating takeout because the chairs had not arrived yet and felt something unfamiliar settle over him. It was not triumph. It was safety, which mattered more. Linda learned about the move after it was already real. Not announced. Not debated. Real. By then, Gabriel had filed what needed filing, secured visitation terms, updated direct deposits, and removed himself from every financial entanglement he legally could. She called 6 times in one afternoon. He answered the 7th because Isaiah was with her. After speaking to his son, he listened while Linda demanded to know how he could make a decision this big without discussing it. Gabriel almost laughed. This from the woman who had vanished with his child and money by text message. He did not argue. He simply said, "I'm discussing Isaiah. The rest is already handled." Karma did not arrive with fireworks or courtroom monologue. It came the way real consequences usually do: boring, expensive, and impossible to charm away. Terrence, it turned out, liked nostalgia more than responsibility. Once Linda's money tightened and Gabriel's labor was no longer available on call, Terrence's devotion developed scheduling conflicts. Miss Claudette, who had been happy to host Rebellion in theory, grew less enthusiastic when Rebellion ate groceries, dominated the bathroom, and brought tension into every room. Linda had imagined leaving Gabriel would make him collapse and prove her power. Instead, his absence exposed how much of his stability had quietly been built on his consistency. The collapse was not cinematic. Terrence started staying out. Bills piled up. Linda missed shifts. The SUV she had taken needed repairs she could not afford. And because Gabriel had documented everything, there was no easy way to spin the financial history in her favor. Friends who had cheered her choosing herself became harder to reach when choosing herself required rides, loans, and childcare. She was not sorry, exactly. People like Linda rarely become sorry on schedule. But she was shocked, and sometimes shock is the closest selfish people ever come to moral revelation. Gabriel heard bits and pieces through legal updates and family whispers, then went back to making dinner. What made the ending satisfying was not that Linda suffered, though she did. It was that Gabriel no longer needed her suffering to feel whole. By then he had built a life too sturdy to revolve around her collapse. He had Isaiah for scheduled stretches in Charlotte, and those weekends became sacred. They explored parks, argued over pizza toppings, and built a routine that belonged just to them. One night, they tried assembling a bookshelf together and produced a leaning monument to male overconfidence. Isaiah stared at it and said, "This shelf believes in itself, and that's what matters." Gabriel laughed until he had tears in his eyes. In those visits, romance returned in a gentler form. Gabriel learned how to braid care into ordinary acts, warming Isaiah's towel in the dryer after a shower, remembering which cartoon voices annoyed him, packing road trip snacks in the exact order the boy liked to eat them. Once, while walking through Freedom Park, Isaiah slipped his hand into Gabriel's and kept talking as if it were nothing. Gabriel nearly broke inside from the sweetness of it. Love no longer felt like begging to be chosen by someone determined to punish him. It felt like steadiness, attention, and trust rebuilding itself one unglamorous moment at a time. That was richer than passion ever promised. Months later, Linda called again, but her voice had changed. Not softer, smaller. She wanted help with a late bill and hinted that maybe they had both made mistakes, maybe things had gotten messy, maybe healing was possible. Gabriel stood in his Charlotte kitchen, looking at sunlight on the counter, and understood that this was the moment old versions of himself had always folded. Not because he was weak, but because he confused access with love and guilt with obligation. He told her he would continue supporting Isaiah exactly as ordered and nothing beyond that. No anger, no speech, just a closed gate. The line went quiet in a way that finally belonged to him. Gabriel was still imperfect at the end. He remained a man who had once cheated, once lied, once damaged what he later tried to save. He did not get rewritten into a saint because suffering found him afterward. But there was something honorable in the way he handled the wreckage. He took responsibility without surrendering his whole future to punishment. He corrected what he could, accepted what he could not, and stopped volunteering as the emotional landfill for people who enjoyed using his remorse against him. Private success suited him better than public redemption ever would have. Peace, he learned, does not always arrive loud enough for spectators to notice. The lesson in all of it was plain: even if life had taken the scenic route getting there. Regret should make you accountable, not available for endless abuse. Love without respect becomes servitude. Forgiveness without changed behavior is theater. And karma, when it is real, does not need help from revenge. Sometimes it is enough to let people meet the full weight of life without the person they kept taking for granted. Linda wanted Gabriel shattered so she could call it justice. Instead, he became disciplined, distant, and quietly successful. He built a home, protected his son, and kept his dignity. In the end, that was the deepest kind of comeback. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.